Hi viewers, welcome to Dr.Priyadarshini's Will's Coffee House Academy. Today, we are going to cover the novels and novelists of modern age. I still could remember my college days, how I complicated history of English literature and how I left modern age untouched. To be very frank, this is one of the most important periods of English literature, and it is a kind of passport that will lead you to the contemporary period. So let us start with it. Modern Age approximately started in 1901 and it extended till 1945, the year in which Second World War came to an end. I've spoken about the political and social background of modernism in more in detail in my previous video, An Introduction to Modernism for the Beginners. To be very crisp, after two world wars, England was completely devastated. Life loss, unemployment, poverty, economic depression, mental stress and strains prevailed in the country during the period. The country started losing its power to the colonies. You should remember, India too got its independence during this period from Britain, that is post World War period. The scientific discoveries of the period led to religious skepticism and moral perplexity. Politically, during this period, England was ruled by Edward VII and George V. Among the novelists, they divided themselves under the tag of Edwardian writers, which involves H.G. Wells, Ernest Bennett, and John Galsworthy. And the Georgian writer includes James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, and Marcel Proust. For our convenience, I'm going to split up the novelist of the age based on the manner of their writing and the themes which they dealt. So the split up is like this. Modern novelists can be divided into five categories based on the themes which they dealt. The first one would be the beginner. They just started writing the novels as any writer should do, but then fortunately they turned out to be the beginners of the period. So we have the first set of writers called beginners. The next one is sexual mysticism. So we cannot avoid talking about D.H. Lawrence when it comes to sexual mysticism, because modern age is an age which is after, directly comes after Victorian age, an age known for morality, ethics and principles. So when a person like D.H. Lawrence came up with the novels which dealt with sex and sexuality, people were unable to accept it. So practically they banned the novel, and of course it all happened during the period during modern age. So we are supposed to talk about D.H. Lawrence when it comes to sexual mysticism. The third theme which the writers dealt with during the period was stream of consciousness. It's not actually the theme, it is a technique basically. So, stream of consciousness without which modern age is nothing. When we are talking about stream of consciousness, we have to talk about James Joyce and Virginia Woolf, because without them, stream of consciousness is nothing in turn. The next theme they dealt with was social realism. In fact, when I want to talk about stream of consciousness and social realism, I have to quote about the heated argument between Ernest Bennett and Virginia Woolf, and which is a reflection that could be seen in most of Virginia Woolf's essays, including Modern Fiction, Mr. Bennett, and Mrs. Brown. So these are all few examples which shows the heated argument between Virginia Woolf and Bennett. So, because Ernest Bennett, John Galsworthy, and H.G. Wells, they belong to social realism, and they claim themselves to be a realist, for which Virginia Woolf denied their claim, saying that nobody can be real without talking about the mental conflict they undergo. So that is a different category which can be dealt in our next video. So let us keep it aside. Now the fifth theme during the period was satire and social consciousness. We cannot, of course, forget George Orwell's Animal Farm when we talk about satire. So these are all the five important themes that the writers concentrated during the period. Now let us look into the writers and the themes they dealt respectively. Henry James and Joseph Conrad are our beginners to begin with. When it comes to sexual mysticism, I said it was D.H. Lawrence. And stream of consciousness, of course, James Joyce and Virginia Woolf are inevitable when it is a stream of consciousness. And apart from them, we have Dorothy Richardson. Social realism, H.G. Wells, John Galsworthy, and Ernest Bennett, they are very, very important because Virginia Woolf, she has called them as materialist for their claim of being a social realist. And apart from these three people, we have E.M. Foster, Catherine Mansfield, William Somerset Maugham, and Graham Greene. The final theme that we are going to discuss is satire and social consciousness. Under the topic, we have George Orwell, Aldous Huxley, Evelyn Waugh. So let us get started with the beginners. When I talk about beginners, let us talk about Henry James. He is an American novelist and was a courageous experimenter who treated novel writing with meticulous care. He shifted novel writing from plot-oriented phase to the height of artistic perfection that no earlier novelist had done before. His momentous work include Roderick Hudson, The American, The European, The Portrait of a Lady, Turn of Screw, to label some. The literary career of Henry James is divided into three phases. One of the British writers humorously calls it James I, James II, and Old Pretender. Now let us not name it as James I and James II in order to avoid certain confusion. So let us call it as James Career Phase 1, Phase 2, and the Old Pretender. And phase 1 is marked by active exploration of great cosmopolitan subjects like the one we find in the American and the European, which came to an end with The Portrait of a Lady. The second phase is marked by fine social novels. During the period, he abandoned the international theme he dealt previously and wrote novels in naturalistic mode. The Old Pretender period is the third period and it is his major period. It shows his consummate maturity. So, it is not only his novel that one finds Henry James introducing strong aesthetic element, but you can also find it in his treatise and theories about fictional art. He wrote two important theories. One is Notes on Novelist and the second one is Art of Fiction. Art of Fiction is very, very important as it is considered to be a seminal document among early critical theorizing about fiction. So it is a essay which changed or which gave a new perspective to the art of fiction writing. The next writer we're going to deal with is Joseph Conrad. Joseph Conrad was another master novelist whose interest focused on the characters, the human spirit laboring under the stress of critics. He was a mariner and a Polish writer who learned English late in his life. And this is the greatest ironical part that we have because he belonged to Poland and he was a Polish writer. And his mother tongue is Polish and he doesn't know English. But he ultimately turned out to be the great modern writers of English. So that is the ironical part you find there. Though he has written many novels, his reputation rests only on three major novels, Lord Jim, Heart of Darkness, and Nostromo. F.R. Lewis absorbed his technique of straightforward narration of adventurous stories, taking episode one after other. Conrad likes to begin either in the middle of the story or at the climax like the scene of Jim's disgrace in Lord Jim. The American critic Leonard Unger drew parallels between Conrad's evocative prose and the early poems of T.S. Eliot. In fact, the preface of T.S. Eliot's The Hollow Man is is with an epitaph from Conrad's Heart of Darkness. And the epitaph reads like this: Mr. Kurt, he dead. And this has been quoted by T.S. Eliot in his famous poem, The Hollow Man. So that's it with Joseph Conrad. The next theme we're going to discuss about is sexual mysticism. So it is D.H. Lawrence who has to be mentioned when we are talking about sexual mysticism. D.H. Lawrence, being born in Nottinghamshire, grew up amid the coal mining people whom he later portrayed in his fiction. He began writing poems early in life, some of which got published in English Review in 1909. Lawrence viewed culture and civilization as the painted fungus of rottenness. Look at the words he has used. The painted fungus of rottenness. So that much hatredness he had towards culture and civilization. He believed in the natural animal instinct as the true guide of men. Probably that is why he has dealt with sex and sexualities in his novels. Lawrence felt that the man-made cultural system have stifled the real vitality and made man incapable of using real natural gift. T.H. Lawrence constructed this unique philosophy of sexual mysticism, a strange magnetism that exists between the sexes, that is, male and female, which releases a flux of energy or primeval attraction in both directions. So that is the philosophy of sexual mysticism according to D.H. Lawrence. It is nothing but the magnetism between a man and women will result in energy. D.H. Lawrence makes subtle artistic use of natural features to highlight this sexual energy. He turned this into a kind of cult. According to him, sexuality or dealing with sex is something like a religious dogma. And the novel after novel went on depicting its relevance with a moralist insistence. He probes his characters' inner world, their urges and motives, their coming together and swing apart in big oscillation through physical level of their relation. It's quite simple as such. Every character in D.H. Lawrence, they undergo a mental conflict in order to enter into a physical relation. So that is the way he writes. However, his description of physical relation are only a way of revealing the mysterious working of their individual instinct. Lawrence has always remained at the center of controversy. His frank treatment of sex led to charges of obscenity and pornography against him. His notorious novel, The Rainbow, was dragged into the court and the book was banned for some time. That is why I called it as a notorious novel. Similarly, Lady Chatterley's Lover contained passages that he was forced to delete. Lawrence was also a good painter. Some of his drawings depicted nudity and sexual acts which got him into trouble. He was disturbed by the manner in which sex was generally treated, dragging it through mud and shame. So he doesn't like the way sex was dealt in public by the people. But D.H. Lawrence was known of writing novels which read like poetic work. They speak through images and metaphor and create a kind of their own literary notation. Of course, we cannot forget the images of moon and nature in D.H. Lawrence, Sons and Lovers. In the hands of D.H. Lawrence, English novels felt a final and radical break with the traditionalism and acquired a new significance. So this is all with D.H. Lawrence. Considering the length of the video, I have been planning it to present the other themes in my next video. So let's deal with other novelists and themes of the age in the next part of the video. So viewers, hit like button to keep supporting us. We are open to your comments and suggestions. For more such videos, subscribe Dr. Priyadarshini's Will's Coffee House Academy. Take care, stay safe. Thank you.